Hi, folks. I'm here with Alan Levine, Chairman and CEO of Ballad Health, who is the owner of the Unicoi Hospital from Tennessee. You've probably seen the video. Alan, thanks for joining me this morning. How are your folks and your patients doing, first and foremost?
Well, I think today they're focused on the mission at hand, which is to take care of our patients, and we're preparing for, unfortunately, when you have as many people missing as are missing right now, and unaccounted for, they're trying to sort of brace themselves for what could be bad news. We've had to close a couple of hospitals and move patients around to deal with some of the issues that come up during an event like this. For instance, in Greene County, Tennessee, they completely lost all the water service for an undetermined amount of time, which the hospital can't operate without its chillers. So we had to evacuate those patients yesterday. But listen, our folks are resilient. They were heroes during the COVID pandemic. They're heroes now. People who've lost everything have shown up to take care of other people. So I had the privilege of serving as the state health secretary in Florida and in Louisiana during the major hurricane seasons in 2004, 2005, and again in 2008 for Gustav and Ike. And, every hurricane has its own personality, and every one of them comes with a different set of problems. This is the worst I think I've seen in terms of devastation because of the terrain, the mountainous terrain, the drainage systems, the TVA dam systems, the rivers, all that stuff combined to just be a major disaster.
Yeah. And I've lived in the mountains before. I've lived on the coastal plain where I am now. So dynamically different when you're dealing with those mountain valley situations that you've got there. Let's talk a little bit about Unicoi Hospital just for a minute. I understand it was a fairly new hospital, opened in 2018. I'm going to look at my notes real quick. It is a small 10-bed inpatient hospital with an ER and various other services, which is normal for a rural area like this, a small hospital. So you talk a little bit about the hospital and then kind of roll right into the flood and how things went from there.
It's, first of all, let me start with, there's nothing more important than preserving life. And so I'll come to that in a second. I will say it was a shame to see that hospital get destroyed. That hospital has a special story. It was a local community hospital. Like so many rural hospitals, about 7 years ago, it was financially insolvent, and the community was going to lose the hospital. So we agreed to take over the hospital and build a new one for the community. And it was really exciting for the community, exciting for us to be able to preserve access to healthcare in a rural community. When you lose your hospital, it's a real punch in the gut because it's an economic issue for the community. It's hard when you're there and you have emergency services or people pregnant that need services to lose your hospital. So, but it's just a building, and so that's fine. We'll deal with that. Friday morning, we received word from the state or from the local emergency operations center that we needed to evacuate because the Nolichucky River was rising very quickly. So we began to evacuate. We've done this before, so that was no big deal. But by the time the ambulances got to the hospital, water had already begun to intrude on the property, and the ambulances couldn't get to the building. The chief medical officer that we deployed to oversee the evacuation FaceTimed us, and we saw the water. And actually, he was contemplating carrying the patients through the water. We told him not to do that. That would be even more dangerous. He agreed. We secured the patients inside the hospital, but the water was moving fast. I knew there was going to be a problem. So I called and reached out to the state, to the governor's office, and to the director of the state Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, Patrick Sheehan, who's a great person, a good leader. He responded immediately. They began troubleshooting. They sent swiftwater boats from Washington County. The boats couldn't get across the water, so they sent motorboats. The motorboats were able to get across, but once they got across, it was evident that it was unsafe for them to come back because there was so much debris. And by debris, I mean trees, pieces of house, cars. I mean, that's how fast and and furious the water was moving.
And what's the time frame of this? So all these phone calls and things happening, what kind of time frame are we talking?
I called the state at 10:15 in the morning. So this all happened with a period of about 20 minutes.
Hmm.
Um, so we were trying to contemplate what to do. The boats were there by the hospital. The water was already intruding the hospital, and the concern was that the water pressure from the water coming in was preventing them from being able to open doors, and they were concerned that they wouldn't be able to get out of the building. And so we told them to get to the roof. While they were working on that, we were trying to troubleshoot with the state. How do we get to them? The helicopters couldn't fly because of the wind. The hurricane was still, the winds were still unsafe. So there really wasn't a safe way to get vehicles across that water. Even high water vehicles would have run into a problem. So they started getting patients and staff to the roof. Unfortunately, there are some patients that could not get to the roof either because of their size or their severity. And so we made a decision right then to put them in the boats where they would at least be floating and safe. And there were staff in the boats with them. They tethered the boats to the hospital, and that's where they remained for the course of the issue. Everybody got to the roof safely that could. And the concern then was we just kept getting FaceTime calls, and the water was rising so rapidly. And there's 2 or 3 berms on that property. 2 of the berms had failed. There was about a 12 or 13-foot berm that we were concerned if that gave, the force of the water could actually damage the structural stability of the hospital. And so that was our big concern: was the hospital structurally capable of standing for a longer period of time? Because you just don't know about the force of the water. And it's a EFIS hospital. It's built with that styrofoam. It's like a type of it's like a type of exterior surface that's it's not brick. Let's just say that. And so
Yeah.
so that was a concern. It was the building sturdy enough to stay there? So time was obviously the essence. I was communicating directly with the state, and because of the way the winds were, the Virginia State Police was able to take off. And I give credit to Governor Youngkin in Virginia and Governor Lee in Tennessee. Their staffs coordinated to dispatch the Virginia State Police helicopters, and they were the first ones there. So it was Commonwealth of Virginia was the first on the scene to help us. I can't even imagine how the people on the roof felt when they saw those helicopters coming. Because that water was rising. So, I mean, it was within a few feet of the top of the building. And so you've seen images of it, and it's really frightening. And I'll tell you, this could have, thank God for the structural stability of the hospital, because, then they started landing the helicopters on the roof, and that hospital's not built for helicopters, certainly not Blackhawks, but it stood and it's still standing. So God had his hand on that. And I'll tell you, at one point during the morning, we were in the emergency operations center at our corporate office. And when we were out of things we could do at the moment until the helicopters could get there, we stopped and just prayed for God to give strength to the building and to give strength to the people on top of the building. And then the rescue started, and I headed down to Unicoi because I wanted to be there to greet them when they got there. And the first nurse that got off the helicopter, first thing he said was, "Where's my patients?" Because they of course unloaded the patients first. And I was just very moved by that. Just the only thing he was worried about were his patients okay, and he wanted to go make contact with them. The administrator of the hospital, actually, all those patients went to Johnson City Medical Center. That's where they were transferred to. And the administrator of the hospital went up there to visit the patients to let them know that, I mean, these are all Unicoi County people, and they wanted to make sure that they saw somebody that was familiar to them. So it was, now we're worried. My concern for our team members, that was a traumatic experience for them. And I'll tell you, by the way, it wasn't just our team members. First responders that showed up to help with the evacuation,
Yeah.
they got stranded there also. There was a representative of TEMA that was stuck on the roof with our people, and the Swift River rescue folks, Swift Water rescue folks, that they were stuck there. So it wasn't just our employees, it was the first responders that, you hear this, you always hear this, but when you see it, I get the chills thinking about it. These people ran into danger. They didn't stay away from it. They ran into it, and they could have been in harm's way alongside our people. And thank God they weren't, and they're okay. Now my concern for them is, once things settle down and you start to process what happened and what could have happened, we worry about that, and we'll be there to support folks who need it. And I'll be honest with you, Mark. I think we're meeting today at 10 o'clock to talk about the mental health needs of the region, because first responders, they've seen a lot. They've seen livestock drown. They've seen people get swept away in the river. And I'm very concerned about the well-being of the people who saw all this. And because, and we all know, you know, first responders and nurses, and they're all people too, and they're not immune to the effects of all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back just a second. If you want to capture this, the rescue of the people from the boats.
Mm-hmm.
How did that whole piece work? Were they in the helicopters as well, or did we finally get boats in to get them?
No, they went up in the helicopters. They lifted them out, and we had a couple of patients that were pretty substantial in size, and so there was a lot of work done. Just I think securing them and making sure they were safe before getting them on the helicopters. But people came either in a Black Hawk or in the Virginia State Police helicopters. And I'm proud, by the way, we have a partnership with Virginia State Police. The medical personnel on the state police helicopters are actually Ballad Health employees.
Mm.
And so I actually went Saturday morning, first thing. Governor Youngkin flew down to Southwest Virginia and met with the state police who responded. I went up there and met with him and personally thanked them for what they had done.
Right. No, it's fantastic. And you got to take care of the people, right? I mean, making sure they know you appreciate them, but also hearing, that first nurse getting off the helicopter and the only thing he wanted to know was where were his patients. It's a phenomenal testament to your people and to the culture within the organization. So I appreciate that. So what's next for you? What's next for Ballad Health and Unicoi Hospital?
Well, right now we're still in response mode. We're working closely with each of the local emergency operations centers. Multiple counties around us and in our service area have been severely impacted. So we're just trying to provide support to them. As I mentioned, Greene County has no water. So there's a lot of logistics going on there. Carter County, I'm in close contact with the mayor of Carter County, who's literally flying on Black Hawk missions to bring supplies to people who are stranded. We've had to transport people on the Blackhawks directly from the scene to our trauma center because we've had some people that had some injuries. So it's heartbreaking. The pictures that I'm seeing everywhere from Banner Elk, North Carolina, all the roads are cut off. People are stranded there. The terrain of this part of the country is very difficult, and it's certainly not built for this kind of impact from the water. And this is a once in a 100-year event.
Lifetime.
Yeah, for sure. And so, look, I think everybody's doing the best they can. I think the governor is leaning into it in both states. I know Governor Youngkin's been here. Governor Lee has been here. Governor DeSantis from Florida, I spoke with his chief of staff yesterday. He's deployed. I think he's referred to it as Operation Blue Ridge. He's deploying a bunch of people from Florida's emergency management to come up here to provide help and support. So I think the one thing I'm most concerned about is the lack of reporting nationally on the impact of this to this region and to Asheville, North Carolina. It's devastating. My wife is a nurse, and she's stranded in Asheville right now at our property there, and thankfully she's okay. She and I have been able to make contact, but for about 72 hours, I couldn't reach her.
Right.
And I got to tell you, that's terrifying. And so for the 1,400 or so people who are not accounted for right now, their families are very afraid. And the public, I'm a little bit disappointed the national media is sort of not telling their story, because they deserve people's prayers. And but we'll get through it. Once we get through the recovery, we'll think about how to recover and rebuild from all this.
Right.
This part of the country is extremely resilient. Southern Appalachia, the folks here are used to fending for themselves. And there's an old story. this region is well known for what's called the Over Mountain Men. Back in the Revolutionary War period, the General Cornwallis from Great Britain wanted to take over our area, and he sent some folks over the mountain to warn everybody in our region that they're all going to be killed if they don't adhere to the wishes of the throne. And people from all over this region got together and they went over the mountain and basically destroyed all of those British soldiers. And basically that's one of the most unbelievable stories of the Revolutionary War. But the people here, that's how resolute and self-determined they are. And so you see it, civilians are out cutting down, clearing roads, helping each other out. It is hard though to watch. I saw a video yesterday of somebody pretty rugged guy who was crying because he lost all of his cattle and his horses. He watched them float away in the water, and there's nothing he could do to help them. And that's the kind of thing we're worried about, is the mental well-being of the people who have witnessed a lot of very tragic things.
Yeah. Well, Alan, I appreciate you taking time this morning to talk with us. We've been talking with Alan Levine, Chairman and CEO of Ballad Health from the Unicoi Hospital in Tennessee. Folks, if you think it can't happen here, it has happened. And we're going to be following this and making sure that we do everything we can to get the word out. Please keep that area in your thoughts and prayers, and make sure that we're doing what we can to donate where donations are required, and we're doing what we can to support the rescue and recovery effort. This is Marc Bashoor, Executive Editor for FireRescue1.com. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.